He hung upon that cross as dawn's first light unfurled across the empty plain. Spartacus, the great rebel, was still alive, alive enough to scream. They had not killed him quickly. In the pale sun, his body writhed and convulsed, blood mixing with dust on the wood beneath him. The desert wind carried the sounds of his agony across the silent fields. It was a scene of unimaginable cruelty, and it was only the beginning. Spartacus had survived death many times in the arena. Now he would taste it fully. Years before, Spartacus had been a soldier far from the wild mountains of his home. Captured by Rome's legions, he was bound in iron and forced into a gladiator school at Capua. There, in the dark pit of the arena, Spartacus learned the taste of death every day. Under the whip's crack and the roar of the crowd, he stood alone against a dozen men at once, a savage dance at the edge of oblivion. Day after day his sword painted the sand with blood, and the earth drank his sweat. Yet Spartacus never yielded. By dawn he always rose, scarred but unbroken, as defiant in captivity as he had been free on the battlefield. Then one night changed everything. The moon hung low as Spartacus and 70 other broken gladiators rose up together. They crushed their unprepared guards, smashed open their chains, and stormed out of Capua in a blaze of steel. Freedom tasted bitter and sweet on Spartacus's tongue. He led the fugitives through the Italian countryside, gathering the forgotten and the beaten along the way. By morning, their numbers were in the hundreds. Word of Spartacus's escape spread across Italy like wildfire. Rumors grew of a gladiator who had dared to kill Romans and still walk free. Soon, tens of thousands of slaves deserted their masters to join him, handing Spartacus spears instead of shackles. Rome had never faced such terror. Senators quaked in their marble halls as dispatches arrived from the front. Spartacus ambushed Consul Gellius on the Via Appia, cutting his army to pieces. Next, he sacked the force sent from Capua, right under Rome's very nose. To the Romans, it was as if a plague had taken human form and wielded a gladius. Desperate, the Senate entrusted the hunt to Marcus Licinius Crassus. Rich, ruthless, and undefeated. His legions swept down from the north in gleaming columns. The Republic hoped the thunder of iron would drown out Spartacus's war cry. For Spartacus's followers, he became more than a leader. He was vengeance and hope made flesh. Wherever he marched, fields burned like offerings to the gods. Rich villas became pyres, slaveholders woke to empty mansions. Spartacus offered those he freed a choice: fight with him or go free. Mercy remained amid the carnage. He killed the resisting and spared the innocent. Rome called it rebellion. The Senate spat on mercy's name. To the Republic, Spartacus was not a man, but a monster. They decreed no trial would be held. His fate was sealed by blood before the day began. In a final, brutal campaign, Crassus cornered Spartacus on a rain-soaked plain in Lucania. Under banners dark as storm clouds, the last battle unfolded. Spartacus fought at the forefront, spear in hand, roaring defiance. He slashed through enemy after enemy with furious strength. His men held firm behind him, shields locked until even their wall began to crack. Then, amid the chaos, a lance found Spartacus's side. He stumbled to one knee, the world tilting around him, blood steaming from the wound. Some say he surrendered himself to spare his men, others that he fought to the last. Whatever the truth, Spartacus was at Rome's mercy. When Spartacus opened his eyes again, Roman soldiers were standing over him. They stripped away his torn garments and bound his wrists in rough rope. A centurion placed a heavy iron collar around his neck and spat on his bleeding chest. Spartacus managed a bloody grin, defiance to the last, before a sharp kick in the gut sent him collapsing. They dragged the rebel leader to a nearby ridge where dozens of wooden crosses already stood silhouetted against the sky. Across the field, hundreds of crosses rose like a gruesome forest. Crassus strode forward, eyes cold as the iron spikes in his hand. He gave the order. Spartacus and 6,000 of his surviving followers were to be crucified along the Appian Way, so that all Italy might witness their fate. There would be no mercy here, only terror carved in wood and blood. This was Rome's final message to slaves everywhere. Defy us, and this will be your end. On that ridge, Spartacus's execution began at dawn. Legionaries forced him to carry the heavy horizontal beam of his own cross. Each step was agony, the rough timber gouged deep into his mangled back. He stumbled and fell on the gravel, coughing up dust and blood. The soldiers formed a grim circle around him. Spartacus lay panting on the earth, staring at the sky as the sun climbed. No one offered mercy. He understood then that neither fate nor fortune would save him. Then the lash fell. First, they stripped Spartacus naked and tied him face down to the base of the cross. Soldiers, grim-faced and methodical, wielded leather whips knotted with bone and metal. Each crack opened flesh and muscle like shredded fabric. Spartacus screamed, an unearthly, feral howl as ribbons of red and white peeled from his back and fluttered to the ground. The earth drank the blood that poured out. They lashed him again and again until every nerve in his body was screaming. Still he would not scream. When they finally paused, Spartacus lay trembling and broken, every breath a battle. But a flicker of fire still burned in his eyes. Next came the nails. They laid Spartacus face up on the crossbeam and forced his arms outstretched. An executioner pressed a long iron spike against his left palm. The hammer fell, bone shattered with a sickening crack, white and red mixed under his eyeballs. Spartacus bit into the earth to muffle the cry ripping from his throat. A second strike pinned his right palm. His arms were now fixed out like wings of defiance. Finally, they took his legs. A single nail was driven through the arches of both feet, pinning them together. His knees jerked upward with agony as the cross was hoisted. He was crucified. They raised the cross upright with a groan of wood. Spartacus's chest pressed against the vertical post, arms still cast high above him. The midday sun blazed down mercilessly. Sweat poured from his brow, mixing with the fresh blood and dust. Flies swarmed his open wounds, and vultures wheeled overhead like dark omens. The hot wind carried the stench of iron and death. Around him the legionaries stood silent, stone-faced, watching the suffering unfold. Spartacus's throat was parched, but he made no sound. His eyes burned with fierce light. Even pinned there, he stared down the sunrise in defiance. Night fell, but Spartacus did not die. The guards made no effort to hasten his end. They wanted this horror to last as long as possible. He remained hanging under the stars, each breath a tortured rasp. He murmured prayers and curses into the darkness as the hours crawled. When dawn came again, he was still alive. A centurion approached with a spear. With a heavy grunt, he drove it into Spartacus's side, twisting the metal until blood boiled behind his eyes. Spartacus gasped, a white-hot scream building in his chest, and then, at last, the rebel leader slumped. He drew one final rasping breath, then slipped into silence. On every side of the Appian Way, bodies swayed in the breeze. 6,000 of Spartacus's followers hung side by side like broken marionettes. Parents shielded their children's eyes. Senators averted their gaze. Crassus rode at the head of this grim procession, satisfied that his vengeance was complete. The rebellion was crushed, and Spartacus was dead. And yet, history would remember a different truth. Rome's cruelty had forged a legend. Those crosses were meant to bury Spartacus's name forever, but instead made it immortal. The slave who offered a rebellion received a crucifixion, and in the end, his defiance outlived them both. Spartacus died a slave, but he lives on as a symbol of courage against tyranny. Would you have stared back at the sun on that cross, eyes blazing? How much pain can a spirit truly endure? Thank you for hearing this grim tale. How does Spartacus's brutal end make you feel? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this story chilling, consider subscribing so you won't miss our next dark chronicle about a man whose intestines were ripped from his body.